right, buddy, almost done. That's good. Actually, we need 6 more inches that way, guys. There we go. That looks good. Gotta be good. Man.
You guys, have you gone mad? What are you doing? Why is there furniture on this slab?
We can't put furniture in this house yet. We don't have a certificate of occupancy. In fact, the inspector's here now. We're in trouble.
It's gonna be okay, Lonnie. We're not gonna leave it here. The big part about building a new home is visions and dreams and being able to see what it's gonna look like when we're done. So we've created this setup today so some of our buyers can see what this great room is gonna look like when we're finished building this house.
Absolutely. Nobody can visualize this unless this is here. So whether we get in trouble or not, we're going to try to get this done. We better open the show up really quick before the inspector comes back, guys.
Yeah, no mistakes. Let's go.
Get the rest of our stuff and let's get back here in a second. Okay, Tom.
Oh, thank you so much.
Sure, very welcome.
Oh, these are comfortable.
Okay, hey Lonnie, would you go ahead and open up for us?
Sure. Hey, my name's Lonnie Norris. Welcome to Between the Studs. I'm here with part of the Granite Ridge Builders crew, including Tony Ranke, our president. You know, we build custom homes in northern Indiana, northwest Ohio, and also parts of southern Michigan. And we enjoy coming into your home and sharing with you exciting things about our exciting business.
And we're excited. It's beautiful out, and we are in Brownstone. This is a brand new subdivision for Granite Ridge Builders. This is located northwest in Huntertown. On the north side of Huntertown, if you drive right through on Old Lima Road or 3, here we are just north of Schoaf Road. Beautiful lots and a lot of construction going on.
There is a lot going on, and one of the most important parts of any constructed home is the concrete. So what we're going to do, today's segment is all about concrete. A lot of people didn't know that if you have a slab home, 15% of the cost is actually the concrete and the stone that goes underneath it. If you have a basement home, it's about 20%. So it's extremely important. If you don't get the foundation right, you've heard that before, nothing else will go right. So today's segment is all about concrete. Do you guys have any thoughts about concrete, where it started or how we're using it in the past?
Well, yeah, even back as long ago as 500 BC, the Greeks and the Romans used to use concrete, and they used a volcanic ash mixture that was in there, that the formula was actually lost for many years, and they couldn't do it and replicate it at all anymore until eventually someone else came around with it again.
You're right. About 100 years ago, there was a man we're familiar with. His name was Thomas Edison. After he sold his GE Capital company, he began to work with iron ore, and out of that came his interest in concrete. And one of those components was Portland cement.
Exactly, that was the name of his company, Lonnie. He named it Portland Cement. There's a lot of historic buildings still standing today that used his Portland cement. I think my favorite was the old Yankee Stadium that we just lost about a year ago.
Also, a lot of people don't know, but he actually built houses. He built houses that are still standing today, and furniture and buildings out of concrete.
And that Portland cement is still a very important ingredient into our concrete that we pour today. Essentially, there are 4 main ingredients. You have your cement, you have your sand, rock, and water. And we're gonna get into that a little bit more.
And one person who really mastered the art of this is Frank Lloyd Wright, with a lot of his different architectural designs, cantilevering it out, making some really beautiful building and homes, all with this concrete.
You know what? There's a lot of things going on. I hear some trenching going on. I think we better get to it. Let's all pick our segments that we like the best, and let's talk about today's concrete.
I kind of like sitting in the living room.
Well, this may look very unusual. We're here on a concrete slab of a home with a table, visualizing what this is going to look like with our view.
You know, the nice thing about where we're at right now is we can actually see a lot of different types of concrete all at one time as we're sitting in the dining nook. Right now we have a nice concrete slab. Below us we have the outdoor living slab. We can see where the garage is going to be set up, and we can see all the different kind of finishes on this concrete as well.
You're right, these do look different, and there's a reason for that. So our patio outside here has a brushed finish. So this is good for when it's raining or slippery, gives you some texture so that you don't slip and fall.
Right.
Now here in the house, it's smooth. You want it to be smooth because we have flooring that's gonna go in here. So we need a nice smooth finish.
One big thing that we hear from a lot of people once we have the concrete slab poured is, this can't be my house. Looks way too small.
We always expect that call because it does feel small. You can see here, it's a nice size nook, but it looks small with this table. So as the home evolves, it'll feel bigger and bigger, and that's one of the fun parts about building. Right now though, it's just fun to sit here and imagine. We can see exactly what our view is gonna be. It's really exciting.
You know, and so many people are visual learners, so why don't we show them what the house would look like right now when it has the studs up. Now, let's take a look at it, completely finished.
Cut! Guys, it's 1 o'clock. No drinking on the job, buddy. No drinking on the job.
Right in front of the boss, too.
So Luke, what we got behind us here is an interesting piece of equipment that a lot of people have never seen. What is it?
Yeah, we call that a trencher, and essentially what it is it looks like a giant chainsaw that's literally getting lowered into the ground, and it's carving out a trench, and we're in a unique area of the country. That trench will actually hold its form, allowing us to pour concrete directly into it for our footing.
And we call that a footer. And how big is it?
Yeah, so we're actually trenching 14 inches wide. 2 inches of that will get filled with the foam, and then another 12 inches will be our concrete footing. And it goes down about 36 inches to get below that frost line.
And right there's the blue board. You see it's 2 inches wide, and it's actually more than 36 inches deep.
Yeah, and allowing us to do this trench footer, essentially what we call this is a monolithic pour, because the slab is all tied in with that footer. There's no break between them.
So we've got the footer, and then we've got the slab, and that's what makes up the slab foundation. So Luke, again, we're standing here in Brownstone, which is a new subdivision on the north side of Huntertown. And again, we're standing on what's going to be a slab for a 2-story. And let's just remind the folks what we've been done here so far. We've poured it, or we actually trenched a footer, and then we poured it, and we insulated it around the inside perimeter, and then we formed up for what's going to be the slab.
Right.
And we're standing on some kind of a stone here, right?
Yeah, so actually, so far we've brought in 4 truckloads, almost 40 tons worth of stone, and we're standing on about 14 inches worth of stone. And we have a little bit extra stone on this one because we actually have the heating underneath the slab.
Okay, and the heating underneath the slab looks like that?
Yeah, so I can tell that. We're actually standing in the corner of the garage here.
Okay,
so I'm gonna have my furnace sitting right here, which this is called the plenum. Okay. So basically what takes place is the furnace forces the air down into the plenum. And then you can see there's a bunch of shoot-offs from there, and then that delivers the heat or the cool to each of those rooms.
And not just the first floor, but up walls to the second floor.
Right, exactly.
As well.
Where Jonas is digging back there, I can tell that that's going to be an interior wall. We have those boots sticking up. Those are actually going to supply the second floor with all their heating and cooling needs.
You know, at Granite Ridge Builders, we're really big about getting the ductwork, particularly in a 2-story, in the floor. Some guys will try to run it overhead, and you'll end up with great big old drops, and you'll feel like you need to duct down in some rooms. We don't like that, so whenever we can, we put it in the slab, or under the slab, actually.
Yep, and the plumbers have been here as well. Right behind you, Lonnie, you can see that there's going to be our manifold system. They got all those pipes stuck there, and then each one of those runs across to the different bathrooms, laundry rooms, the kitchen sink, and then there's our main water line right there with the tracer wire on it.
So it looks like, Luke, we're getting really ready. We're getting really close to pouring the slab.
Yeah, again, Jonas is back here prepping this. He's basically flattening out the stone, digging in some areas where we want to have a little bit of thickened concrete to provide some more strength. And then once he gets this all set up, we pass a few inspections. Okay. Then we'll be ready to put the Visqueen and welded wire mesh. And you can tell at the top of that form there is actually we're going to be where the top of this concrete is. So again, about 4 inches of where we're standing right now will be the top of our slab.
And just give us about 90 more days, and this place is going to look like this.
All right, Lonnie, and you can see Jonas is working really hard to get this as flat as possible.
Yeah, it's a lot of work, and he's working all by himself. Sorry, Jonas.
I have a shovel here for you.
I'll use it if I can find the power cord.
Right here is one.
I'll help him out.
All right, go ahead.
Okay, Luke, I saw you talking to Lonnie a little bit. I see we've got the Visqueen down. I see we have the wire mesh. See we have the rebar. Can you tell me again how this all comes together and why it's the way it is?
Yeah, so this is literally the next step after where Lonnie and I just were. So Jonas would have gotten this prepped to this point, and you can see we'll just start from the lowest point. We have this what's called Visqueen in place.
Okay.
And basically the whole purpose of Visqueen is to manage the moisture that's either in the stone that we just placed, or all ground has moisture in it. And we want to keep that moisture from radiating up into the house. So that's the whole purpose of the vapor barrier, is to stop that on the stone side.
So now that we have the vapor barrier down, we put in the wire mesh. Now when we're doing the wire mesh, they're actually going to be lifting this up as they're pouring the concrete, correct?
Yep, and you can see them with their shovel there. They got a little hook on it, and they're just pulling it up as they're working that concrete. And they want to get it towards the middle third of that 4 inches, and that just helps lock this entire slab into one unit. That's the whole purpose of the wire mesh, is to make it one solid piece of concrete that all is tied together.
Now I also see rebar coming up that's going to be out of the footers, and now they're bent it all over.
Yep, and that's again tying the footer directly into the slab, creating that monolithic pour. So when it was just footers, it was sticking up out of the ground like that. Now that they got the wire mesh and the vapor barrier in place, they bend it over, and then that way that rebar goes half into the footer, half into the slab, again locking it all into one solid piece of concrete.
So at this point right now, we've already put down some stone. We've already got some of the underground heating going in this one. We have stone, we have wire, we have Visqueen, then we have the wire mesh that we've bent over the rebar.
Yep.
And really the next step is letting them pour the concrete, isn't it?
Absolutely. The very next step is we're going to order out the concrete trucks, start pouring this slab, and then we'll be ready to frame on it. So they could be pouring probably tomorrow on this one if I had to guess.
And so they could be framing just a couple days after that, correct?
Absolutely. So we're getting very close to wrapping up the foundation stage on this house.
Oh, that's fantastic.
All right, time for my feats of strength. Come on, let me see
Bend
it.
that. You know they bend all those by hand, don't you?
I warned him.
Well, Luke, I've been around Granite Ridge long enough to see you do this talk, and I know that you're going to explain all the parts that go into concrete here. I've got water, and I'm not sure how this is air, but I think you're going to explain that.
Yeah, we'll get to that one last, but let's stick with those 4 ingredients I talked about at the very beginning.
Okay.
So obviously, most people know that into concrete, we need water. So that's ingredient number 1. Then we have what's called fine aggregate, which is basically just sand. So
Okay.
that's the fine aggregate. So then, Izzy, we have what's called the coarse aggregate. So that's the much larger stone that goes into the mix. And then last but not least is our Portland cement. So that's the bonding agent. And then when you add the
Okay.
water to these 3, that's called the hydration. So we're hydrating the entire process here. Now when they go in, they mix all these together, they roll them in that big drum that you see those concrete trucks driving down the road, and they all mix together, and then they pour it out on the slab. Maybe you've seen on our footers, you can see some more of this coarse aggregate. You can actually
Yeah.
see those larger stones. Well, on our top of our slabs, you don't see those large stones, and that's because you can see in this video that they're working the top of that slab with that bowl float, and they're pushing that coarse aggregate down just a little bit to bring that cream to the top.
Okay.
Now, we mentioned we have a 5th item here. You mentioned this is air. As you guys can see, that is not air. When you shake this up, it provides thousands and thousands and thousands of tiny bubbles.
Okay.
Any idea where we would use this?
Is that going to help float the stuff up?
Yeah, so we only use this on our exterior concrete, and it's an additive to these other 4 ingredients. And what this does is it provides tiny little air bubbles in the concrete.
Okay.
The exterior concrete gets wet in the wintertime around here, it freezes, it gives that moisture and that water an area to expand, so that way it doesn't do any damage to our actual concrete. So very important to have this in your mix in those exterior concrete, especially the driveway.
Well, it's amazing how much has happened out here, and we still don't have our concrete slab poured. Now, Luke, like I said, so much has happened. How do they know where to place all of these plumbing lines?
Well, the top of that wood that you see out there is going to be the top of our slab. It's also going to be the edge of our slab. So they can pull measurements off of there. As you can see these pipes here. Once you have your eye trained and you know what you're looking for, this is actually a fun stage because you can actually start to visualize where things are located. So that's going to be our kitchen sink, and there's also a heat run there, so chances are we're going to have a window also right here. We know this is going to be our view, and they usually put those heat ducts close to where there's a window to buffer that cold from coming in.
So chances are everywhere we see a heat duct, there's going to be a window, and this we can tell is a 2-story because our ducts are in the floor.
Right, then they're in the floor, and you can see behind us there, you can see you actually go up into a wall. That'll provide the heat for the upstairs. But yeah, you mentioned it. You can actually see down the line, you can see those heat runs, and I can actually tell where the patio door is going to be, where the windows are going to be located in the bedrooms. Again, you can actually tell a lot during this phase once you realize what it is you're looking at. You can identify bathrooms, where your toilet's going to sit, showers.
So Luke, we talked about footers, and actually you can see the footer here.
Yep, that's the footer.
That 14-inch by 36-inch deep piece of concrete that literally the house is going to sit on. And where do we go from there?
Well, let's try to give our viewers kind of a inside view of what we would encounter in this concrete. Let's go over all the layers. So let's start from the top. Here's a plate, essentially a framed wall plate that would sit right down on the top of this foundation. Now, this slab, the top portion, is 4 inches thick.
4 inches of concrete.
4 inches of solid concrete. But in the middle of that concrete, we actually have wire mesh that's in there.
Okay, what do they use that for?
So the wire mesh is actually 6 inch by 6 inch squares that runs across this entire surface. What that does is it essentially locks that concrete all together. It makes it one solid unit. Another way of doing that would be rebar.
Okay.
Rebar, they typically put it on 3 foot by 3 foot patterns as opposed to 6 by 6 inch. So another way of doing it, both are acceptable ways to do it. We do the welded wire mesh. It just ties everything in a nice solid
And we
unit.
should mention, we do use rebar in our footers, don't we?
So this piece of rebar would actually be sticking up out of our footer, and then when we're ready to pour the slab, we bend this over, and that's what gives us that monolithic pour. So that ties the foundation into the slab, all one unit.
So under the 4 inches of concrete, what's below that?
So you got the 4 inches of concrete, and then below that you have about 8 to 10 inches of stone.
Okay.
But there's a lot of things that go in that stone. But we forgot one thing. Right above that stone between the concrete and the stone is actually a vapor barrier.
A vapor barrier, like a visqueen type product.
So
what do they use that for?
It's a giant piece of plastic. It's like 6 mil plastic. Basically what we do there is we're making it so that any moisture that may be locked in that ground will not penetrate up through the slab into the house. So again, it's a vapor barrier keeping any of that moisture out of the house.
Okay, and then under the vapor barrier?
Yep, then under the vapor barrier we have our stone. Yep, but in that stone there's a lot of mechanicals that are tied in there. So you'd have your heating ducts if it was underground heating running through there, and you have your plumbing, which you can see a lot of those pipes sticking out behind us that run through that stone, come up through the vapor barrier, then through the concrete, allows it for a nice clean finish. You don't have all that running through the walls of your house.
And also sometimes even cables or conduit that allows cables to be run to do electrical outlets, like in islands, for example, in the kitchen. A lot of things to think about, a lot of reasons to measure twice.
Yes,
when it comes to pouring the cap or the slab.
Yep, and then below that stone is where we get back to the footer that we talked about in the previous segment.
Luke, the form boards are off. What are we going to do next?
Well, essentially what we have now is a slab that's ready to be framed on. But we're standing in a very unique area here, and we're actually at the front corner of the garage, and we have a lot of different transitions going on here.
So now we say there's a lot of angles in building, but we have a curve going on inside our garage floor here. What's that about?
Yeah, so you can see this curve here, and this is actually a 4-inch dip from where your foot is to this distance right here. And it's hard to see, but up by those red and blue pipes, that's also 4 inches higher. And that's all due to managing the water that may be dripping off your car, like from the snow, and that's gonna run to the overhead door and then out of the garage. So we have to make that up somewhere, and that's where this curb comes in. Then we have this area here, which is your framed wall. So right here would be a wall that would end up having brick or stone on the outside that wraps around. And then at this point is where our overhead door transitions to.
So if we do the slope floor, it's a little bit more of a cost-effective way of doing things inside the garage. For about $300 more, we can do the formed wall on the outside, which is a little bit easier to keep. Well, again, if you're washing your car in the garage, the water's not going to have as much room to kind of settle. And as well, it'll also give you the opportunity to put your cabinetry right up against the wall.
Yeah, and that's actually called a perimeter lip around that edge there. And also, some people find it hard to navigate this curb. You know, when you step out of your car, stepping on that uneven surface sometimes doesn't feel the best, so that perimeter lip essentially eliminates this curve here. We got another area of transition just on the outside here. So where my foot is going to be the base, the stone base for our driveway. And we do a couple things to make this transition happen.
So below here, this is the footer then, right?
Yep, you can see the footer there, which runs across this entire front of the house. And then we pour that driveway, and that driveway doesn't have a footer underneath it. That's actually a free floating 4-inch slab that during the seasons is going to have the tendency to raise up a little bit and shrink down a little bit with freezing and thawing. So we actually take that into account And from this point here, we drop that driveway down about a ½ an inch and we put an expansion joint there to allow that to move freely independently from the footer here.
So during the summer, you might feel a little bump, and you're less likely to feel that during the winter.
Exactly.
Another typical component of most slabs is an attachment. In this case, it's a front porch.
Yeah, and out in the field we call those hookups, so it's essentially a separate pour from the main slab. But in this case with this porch, you can see we still have a footer down there, and we've actually dropped this about 3 inches because it will be exposed to the weather. So you get a driving rain, that allows that slab to be up so none of the water runs up underneath the plate. But you can see this is a little bit thinner. We still have 4 inches of concrete, but only a couple inches of stone because we don't have all of the mechanicals running through it, so we don't need all that stone base.
And you mentioned, Luke, sometimes, well, in this case, we're 2 to 3 inches below the slab level, but it is possible in some cases to bring it up pretty close to the slab level.
Yep, to get it flush in case we ever need, a barrier-free type situation for the home.
You saw a minimal threshold example.
Yep.
Yeah.
Luke, we're standing here on the slab and it looks like they made a mistake.
It does, and we get that call from homeowners a lot, but actually where I am standing right here is actually going to be a future shower. And that right here, this hole, you can see there's a thin layer of concrete that was over the top of that because there's actually a drain underneath there. So when we put that shower in place, we have access to that drain, but they put a thin layer of concrete over there so they can trowel this all out and get it nice and smooth, and they don't have that drain sticking up.
Now, what is this poking through the slab?
So you can see we've got 3 water lines there. One's red, that's gonna be the hot for the shower. There's 2 blue ones, which are one's gonna be the cold for the shower, but then there's that other third one where you'd be like, I don't understand what this water line is for. Right out the side here, we're gonna have a water spigot. So that's where that runs through because we get that in on the warm side of the wall.
Okay, well, it's incredible what this is gonna look like once the shower is in. Just snap your fingers, beautiful. And here is a beautiful tile shower with a corner seat. Here is a jetted porcelain tile shower.
All right now, Elizabeth, we actually have to bust the rest of this concrete up. What do you say? You wanna give it a try?
Yes, let me go.
So Lonnie, as we sit here today and talk about concrete, we're looking at a slab. There are some things that are going to run underneath this part of the slab, which kind of acts as a cap.
Right.
One of them is that white pipe there right to your right.
Right, that is a clean out. And basically all the wastewater in the home from the bathrooms and from the kitchen and utility room are piped to this location, and then there's an underground pipe that goes out to the sanitary sewer and taken away.
And the purpose of that pipeline is if something were to get clogged, we have access to be able to snake that out and clear the line for future.
Right, there's a little cap there that can screw off. You can get down there with a snake or with a camera if you got a problem.
And we've got 2 stud tips today. One actually involves the cap, right?
Right, make sure the cap is tight. If a kid would take that off and begin to throw things down there, you could have a big problem quickly.
And the second stud tip of the day, Lonnie, depending on where you build your custom home, you may have 1 cap, or there's certain areas you'll see 2 of those. One actually out by the curb and then one closer to the home.
You're right.
Lonnie, as we talk about slabs today, we actually have to talk about what comes from underneath the slab, and here's some good examples right here.
Right, this is part of the plumbing system, JR. It starts out in the front yard, actually hooks onto the water tap, then it comes under the slab up here, and this is your main line in.
And this is made of this is called PEX tubing.
Right.
A lot of people get concerned about running this underneath the slab, Lonnie. This is one of the most durable products that'll ever go into a new home.
Yeah, the local waste places say, how are we gonna get rid of this stuff? It just doesn't deteriorate. And by the way, what we've got here is the main line in, and this is going to go to a meter, and then from the meter to the ManaBlock system, there'll be a hot side and a cold side, and it's going to run individual lines to each location.
Yeah, and Lonnie, that manifold system, we've shown some good examples of that in the past. Basically just a large distribution box for each individual water line getting run through the home.
Right. In the old days, we used copper, and we did a daisy chain, as we call it. It'd take maybe 5 minutes to get the hot water to the master bath. This is going to eliminate that, get the water there 60% quicker.
Yeah, as we look at these, this is, for me, one of the best forms of organized chaos that you'll see as you get to that slab stage. Doesn't look like we know what's going on here, but it is very, very controlled and organized.
We got a plan.
We here outside on just concrete. I do realize it felt so small, but now we're into framing. It feels a lot bigger in here now, and you can see so many other different things.
You really can. Once you have the concrete down and you have that foundation, and then you get the studs put around it, you can truly start to see where everything's going to be at in your home. If you look behind us, you see some of those water lines coming out of the concrete. You also see an electrical line coming out of there. That's where your island's going to be. That way you have your hot, your cold water, you have your dishwasher set up in there, and you have it set up for the electrical outlets that will be in the island. You also start to see the heating and cooling vents a little bit more, where they're going to be located at the house. You can really see the house coming together right now.
I'm a witness that when we were on the concrete, it did not feel like this house was going to be big enough to fit a family. But here in framing, again, you start to feel a little bit different. It does feel more spacious now.
You're right. Once we have the studs up, we can really see how the concrete comes into play with everything in the home. When you look behind me, you'll see the hot and the cold water lines coming up where the island's going to be. You'll see where the dishwasher line's going to be. You'll see the electrical line coming up so that we have the outlet in the island. You'll see all types of different things happening. You'll see the heating and cooling vents going on. We even see the gas line happening behind us, so we know that there's going to be a gas stove in this house. We also have the base plates. The base plates where everything is going to be built up from the foundation to make your new home complete.
Well, it's amazing just to get to the slab foundation stage, how many trucks, tractors, and excavator it takes. I tell you, this would be my boy's dream out here.
Yeah, it really wouldn't be possible to build these houses like we do today without all that equipment. Just to this point, the foundation, we've had this bulldozer come and scrape the lot off. We had the trencher that we mentioned actually trench and get that dirt out of the footers. We had dump trucks, we've had slinger trucks, we've had concrete trucks, we've had bobcats, you name it. We've had a lot of equipment in just literally a few weeks already on this job site to get this house started and in the right direction.
All right, guys, hey, we got to close. We're out of time. This was a lot of fun today, though.
It was. Hey, when it comes to concrete, if you think about it, it's quite an art to pour it right. It takes quite a team to do it right as well.
There's literally dozens of people, lots of machinery who have to come in here to make it all come together for your perfect basement or slab foundation. And we'd really like to thank a lot of our artisans who were out here dealing with us shooting the show as they were trying to get their work done trenching and pouring this.
And you can see how beautiful Brownstone Manor is here in Huntertown, a brand new subdivision to Granite Ridge Builders. We've already sold half of the lots. They're priced in the 40s on up. Beautiful locations on the pond, cul-de-sac, tree line. Give us a call and reserve your lot today.
Don't forget about the flexible floor plans we've got available, from ranch, 1.5 to 2-story. Lots of different options for you.
Would you go ahead and close for us?
Absolutely. As always, guys, we want to thank you for spending part of your day with us. If you'd like to learn a little bit more about who we are, what we do, and why we do what we do so well, please just pick up the phone, visit the website below. Even better yet, come in our front door. We'd love to talk to you about Brownstone or any communities that are available to you today.
Hey, the concrete truck's ready to pour, and those guys said they need help. So come on, here comes
Who's gonna do some
Elizabeth.
bull floating?
And I'm surrounded by some of the Granite Ridge Builders crew, including Tony Reinke, our president. We build custom homes.
Sorry.
She got too excited.
I'm sorry. Stay tuned.
I'm excited about Brownstone.
My name's Lonnie Norris, and this is part of the Granite Ridge Builders, custom builders. Oh, first start.
Oh, you knew he was not going to get that right. After you had it perfect.
Sorry about that.
Sorry.
Hey, welcome to Between the Studs. My name's Lonnie Norris. This is part of the Granite Ridge Builders crew, and with
It's the chew. It's the Granite Ridge chew.
Then we have what's called fine aggregate, which is basically just sand. So that's the fine aggregate. Then we have what's called coarse
Caggregate?
aggregate.
Horses and cats is what we're putting into your cement.
Want me to start over?